Welcome everyone to the next installment of the CPM webinar series. We're glad you could take the time out of your day to view our presentation today. First, a few housekeeping items. Everyone will be muted during this presentations. If you have any questions, feel free to use the question feature on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll be monitoring those as the webinar is going on, and at the end we'll answer any questions from the panelists that you may have. This webinar is being recorded, and you will get an email follow-up with the link to download the video if you would like to view it later. So first, I wanted to take a quick moment to tell everyone about Beta Raven. While most of you are CPM customers, there are many of you that are not Beta Raven customers. Beta Raven has been automating feed mill equipment for more than 40 years. Our customers range from small family-owned processing operations to multinational organizations. We function as a total service vendor with a single source responsibility for our world-class designed manufactured product. Our years of experience and our large install base give us the unique ability to be our partner to our customers, not just a vendor. Whether the project is a small upgrade to an existing customer or plant-wide control of a new facility, our service has always been our focus. We understand that uptime is one of the most important metrics for a successful operation and have a team of service engineers ready to answer the phone 24/7. And with our help from the CPM companies, we have insight into the equipment we are automating, giving us the ability to provide an automation solution as the equipment was intended to operate. Even though we are known for our feed mill automation products, that is not all that we can do. In the last 30 years, we have been able to work on projects far removed from the animal feed industry. Whether it is plastics, compounding, rendering, chemical extraction, or thermal processing, Beta Raven can provide an automation solution to nearly any manufacturing problem a customer may have. All of our solutions include hardware and software technology partners that are the best in the industry. Our goal is to make the solution last for many years, and to do that, we rely on the most robust and field-tested equipment. With our top-notch service and industry experience, please keep us in mind for your next automation project. And now to introduce our panelists. First, we're going to be hearing from Steve Beanie. Steve is currently our sales engineer that handles the microscale and automation sales for any of the non-southeast portion of the United States. His 34 years of experience have proven very helpful for customers around the country. His previous work in the service and engineering departments allow him to handle many aspects of the customer support. And then we'll listen to Chris Nowakowski. Chris has been working for Beta Raven since 1982. He has been a key programmer for every version of MillMaster developed by Beta Raven. The years of experience have helped Chris understand the many challenges and needs of a feed mill and how they may run their business. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who's going to present us on sequencing by ingredient.
All right. So Chad, you're going to share. I'm going to select my screen. Oop. Sorry. Okay. Chad, do you see, just make sure, do you see my MillMaster screen? Or Christopher?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, good.
I see.
All right, all right, thanks. All right, hello everyone. Again, my name's Steve, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. I know that everyone's busy, so let's get started. So I'm here to talk about sequencing, but along the way, I'm going to brush up on a few other things that I think you guys might want to be informed about. So mostly just some features that, as I'm showing sequencing, I can also display this. And I think the first thing I want people to take advantage of is our online help manual. If you have MillMaster called up, any of the programs, you should have a help button at the top of your screen. you click on help, click on contents, and you'll see a list of topics that you can review. And you can also just go to the index and type a keyword, and you can follow and get information about it. It'll show detailed information along with some examples. And we're going to talk about sequence by ingredient, but we're also going to talk about the old traditional sequence by recipe. But like I said, I want people to take advantage of the help manual. In any feature or function, it's being updated probably on a weekly or monthly basis. Anytime you get a new update to your system, you get a new manual. So don't waste time printing it out, because the electronic version is much better, and you can then view it as you need it. So keep that in mind. Millmaster help. Before I enable sequencing, I am going to run a batch without sequencing so that I can prove that that it works. So here I'm going to run a batch with a poultry starter, and it has some medication in it. So I'm going to go ahead and begin that. As you can see, I have Sacox in there. So I hit begin, and the system is batching up the recipe with any medication in it. And the operator comes up, he's not paying attention. Someone says, hey, we need to load a poultry starter. Go ahead and make that. And he hits OK. Comes up with the verification. I know this is a very simple recipe, but it just has corn and soybean meal in it, and it's supposed to be medication free, and now it allows him to run it. So that's a big no-no. We gotta let the operator know that you just had a sequence fail. And I know many of you are probably relying on manual checks and so forth, but we can get by with adding a few things to our system to take care of that. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about sequence by recipe. It's a little simpler, maybe not as smart as a sequence by ingredient, but I thought I better show that to you. Where sequence by recipe allows the user to set up rules based only on the recipe sequence identifier, such as medicated, non-medicated, or organic, non-organic, etc. So this can be set up with some simple rules. And if I look at my sequences now, I had these preloaded. I have an A medicated, B flush, and C non-medicated. And the only rule that I have set up in here is that a C non-medicated recipe may not follow an A. Very simple, straightforward, but I want to show you this example. Now, also to let you know, A, B, and C, that could be 1, 2, 3. It could be different levels. It could be med, flush, and non-med. Doesn't matter. Those are just identifiers to make it easy to call up. So I have my sequence in there. And again, non-med is not, it may not follow medicated. So I have that in there. And then I need to be able to go into my devices and make sure that they're set up to do the sequencing. So if I call up a device, and you really only need to do one device in an area. For example, on batching, I would do the mixer. Since everything goes through it, we're going to come up here and enable sequencing. Simple as that. We have it enabled. Now the system's going to watch over everything that goes through the mixer, and you can do that same thing for the pellet mill. You could do it for the loadout scale. And again, you dictate what you want sequencing done on. So if you're kind of doing it on batching, that might be good enough, but it's good to do at least batching and loadout, but some people do all the way through batching, pelleting, and loadout. So I have that enabled, and then we looked at the current sequencing, which is the A, B, and C. So now I need to verify that my recipe has that sequence in it. So I have my poultry starter, which has my BMD and Sacox, I should say, and it's a medicated, so I want to flag it as such. I'm doing this manually, but you can also have this transferred in through data exchange through your formulation system, or however you want to do it. But once a sequence is set, any updates to this recipe, that would stay the same. So it's, again, recipe category, I guess you can say, or a sequence. So I have that in there, and then I have my poultry finisher. I already have that set to a sequence of C of non-medicated. So I have my two sequences already enabled. Let's minimize that. And now let's try to batch these. So if I come up, run my medicated poultry starter, and hit OK, and let's start the batch of that. As you can see, it's got Saycox in there. We hit begin, and we're batching it. Let's say the operator goes on lunch break, new guy comes in, he gets a call to make some finisher, and not paying attention, thinking that the other guy did the flush, and he hits OK, and he gets the sequence alert. So as you can see, the system is telling him you're trying to run a non-medicated, which is poultry finisher, after your mixer had medication run through it. So that would be a big no-no. So he would have to flush, he'd have to run a flush, or if he got permission and clearance, I guess, from the manager, or the manager logged in, he can do what we call a virtual flush. So you're not locked out totally. We gave him alert. You have to either, again, cancel this and insert a flush, or do a virtual flush. And again, you can only do this if you have permission. You can set your user levels up. So an operator would not be able to do this, but since I'm a super user, I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, flush it. So you have it enabled. Now he would be allowed to run if he did a manual flush or some other way of clearing that through the system. So we have sequence by recipe. Again, very simple: medicated, non-medicated, organic, non-organic, or you could have different levels of medication, or however you want to do it. I've even seen premix customers that do it based on color, where you can't follow certain colors. But again, it's only based on recipe sequences. So the more advanced method, which I like to use if I think it would become more of an industry standard, is sequence by ingredient. And the way to set that up would be to go to global setups and hit the checkbox, sequence by ingredient. So if you call up your global setups and you don't have that, contact your salesman and we will see what we can do. So we have sequence by ingredient enabled. So we go through there, but sequencing by ingredient allows the user to set up a rule based on an ingredient or ingredient category that may appear in a recipe. So we got our sequence by ingredient set up. Now we're going to go to our sequences. I'm going to blow away these old sequence by recipe items, and we're going to add some new rules or new categories. This runs off of a category. So we're going to first set up a recipe category called horse feed. And what that is we're going to apply this to all of the horse feeds that we have in our system. And whether I have, one or 100, it doesn't matter. I'm going to give these all that category. And then I'm also going to have my ingredients that, let's say I'm going to call this, I'm going to give it an I because it's an ingredient sequence. I'm going to call it beef additive, which is rumensin. All right, if you don't know, but you're not allowed to run any horse feed after you've run a product with rumensin. So I have that. I have my ingredient category and I have my recipe category. That's why I have the I and the R there. So I'm going to set up one rule that says if you are running rumensin, a beef additive, you may not allow horse feed to follow. So again, these sequences may not follow. It can, and you can add more than there too. There can be different levels. You could have, a whole bunch of different levels of horse feed, and you can add them all to this or add other rules. So just to keep it simple, again, beef additive, you will not be allowed to run horse feed after. So we have that set up. And we're going to go ahead and verify that the horse feed is got that set up as a category. So I'm going to call up all of my horse feeds, which in this case I only have three. I got the Triple Crown, the Stud Horse, and the Old Gray Mare. So we're going to add that category to all of our horse feeds. And again, this can be downloaded through your formulation system. But once you put these in there, they're set. You don't have to go back in if you got a new version sent down and so forth. So I have all my horse feeds with the category horse. So we're done with that. Then we need to go to our ingredients and find all the beef additives. And in this case, just to keep it simple, I have three type of rumencins. So I just have to tell the system that looks like it already pulled that in. Beef additive rumencin. Yeah. So I have those set up. So each one of those ingredients are now part of a category. And again, that could be 1 to 100 different or 1,000 different beef additives, but or they can just, you can add all your medications under one category. It doesn't matter. So they're now categorized and we have that rule set up. So we should be good on that end of it. So now, if I'm making my notes right, I think we should be able to run a test batch with this. So we're going to come up. We have sequencing enabled under globals. I have my recipe set up and I have that. So we're going to add the batch of my beef grower that has rumencin. So let's start that. As you can see, we have rumencin in the recipe. Hit begin and we're batching it up. Now the operator, again, not paying attention. He comes up to the schedule. Oop, sorry. And adds a batch of horse feed. And we'll do the high dollar Triple Crown horse feed. And he hits OK. And we get a sequence alert. Again, it's telling him exactly what's going on. He's trying to run the horse feed category, Triple Crown, but he can't because the mixer had a beef additive run through it and he must do a flush. So two types of sequencing, and then this one is based on the ingredients on the previous run through the system. The one thing that I'd like to point out is that if the recipe gets modified and is transferred in and rumencin's removed, it automatically fixes the sequence. So you don't have to do any modification. That's why that one, to me, a sequence by ingredient can be very helpful because it's, to me, a little bit smarter because it's based on the ingredients of the previous run. So before I show you that, I'm going to go ahead and do that in loadout also to show you how that sequencing can be passed on to it. So we ran a batch and everything, it displayed the alarm message as requested. But if I come up here and let's go to loadout, and we're going to ship some product, and let's put this here. Now I don't have any orders in the system, so I'm going to make a new order. And we're going to ship some product out to B&B Farms, and we're going to ship a load of beef grower. And we'll just ship out, I don't know, let's do 1,100 pounds of it, whatever. We got the load set up, and I go ahead and I'm going to hit begin. And now I'm loading my truck with my beef grower. And we'll say my son Cole is the truck driver today. So we loaded it up. We dumped it. We got it in the truck. It's got 1,030 pounds in it based on this order. Now, when I say complete, I'm going to show you a few other functions before I get into the rest of my sequence by ingredient. A new feature that we've recently added is the ability to sign the ticket electronically. So if you have a touchscreen, you can, which I only have a mouse right here, I can sign this ticket and it'll show up on there. So I'm going to show you that. So if I hit print, I'm going to print this out to my PDF here. It's taking a little bit. So here's my ticket going out to, got my beef grower going out to B&B Farms. I got my driver on there. And also another kind of feature I'd like to show you is you can tie feed warnings to certain recipes. So keep that in mind. I think there's others out there that can't do that, but you can import the feed warnings so they automatically appear on the loadout ticket when that recipe is pulled in. But down here is the signature. I know it doesn't look very good because I didn't have my touchscreen, but you can see that this signature is automatically put on there, which allows the next feature I want to tell you about is the ability to email or send as a text message this ticket to your end user. So B&B Farms, when that truck gets loaded and leaves, they get an email from the system saying, here's your ticket, this is what's on its way. So keep that in mind. That's another new feature. The other thing, before I close this ticket out, is you can also print out a label for your sample bag. So again, I got this beef grower, I loaded up the truck, I click on label. I know it looks pretty big here, but this is actually a small label printer, label with sticky back paper that you stick right on your sample bag. I have a lot of customers using this right now. It's very handy. It shows what feed mill. It basically sticks with the sample bag. I don't know how many places I've been to where the sample bag has some, looks like a doctor signed it. You can't even tell what the product is. But anyway, that information is on there. But the key is the load, because once you have that load number, you can get all this other information. So moving on. Now I'm going to uh, do a new load. Let's say that truck went out, delivered the beef grower it had Rumensin in it. The guy comes back, he gets a call from his girlfriend, he's got to go on a hot date. So he parks his truck. New guy comes in, grabs his truck, and he doesn't know what he just shipped, but anyway, he knows that he's got to get a load of horse feed to Farmer Joe down the road. So he pulls in loadout. He selects, he's going to build a new load real fast with of horse feed. And that's going to Edward Jones. He's got a lot of money. And then he's going to select the Triple Crown horse feed because he's got some nice expensive horses sitting there. We're going to ship out 1,000 pounds to him. We hit OK, and I hit begin, and the system brings up the sequence alert. Again, based off of the beef additive Rumensin, and it's keeping track of it by which trailer he showed up, like which pocket on the trailer. So if you had an 8-pocket trailer and half of the truck was loaded with Rumensin type feed and the other half isn't, it would give you the message that pockets 1 through 4 or however. So he gets that message and he realizes, holy cow, I could have just mixed, I could have cross contaminated. So he pulls his truck around and they have a manual place that they can flush it. So he comes back and he, with proper permission, he tells the system, yes, I did a flush. And this gets logged to the audit trail. So remember that. So now he's got his truck flushed. He comes back around and he says, hey, I got a lorry, the lorry scale sitting there. No one else has loaded anything since then, since that beef grower. And he tries again. He goes up and hits begin, but the system also is keeping track of what passed through that scale hopper. Now, with a truck scale, you may do the collecting conveyor type or a shuttle conveyor. Either way, you pick one device that you're going to do the sequencing with. So we have the loadout scale, and again, it's saying you ran Rumensin through that scale. Are you sure? And he can say yes, and then of course he can move on. So as you can see, sequencing works with batching and loadout, and you can also enable it with pelleting. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you real quick where I'm going to remove the rumensin from the recipe. Because remember a while ago when I had it enabled, I got the error message. So if I remove it, because the new version came down of the recipe, again, same number, same everything else, I didn't have to change a thing. It's just the new version came down, but it no longer has that additive in there. So let's try to batch it and see if it gives the error. I hit add batch, and I think it was beef grower. Hit OK. Oop, let's get rid of this here. So no rumensin in this recipe. I hit begin, and now the operator's like, hey, I need to make some horse feed. Again, the old triple crown, and the system says, you're fine to go. There's no rumensin in the recipe. So hopefully that gives you a good explanation, the difference between sequence by recipe versus sequence by ingredient, and also how we did it in loadout, and a few other little features along the way. Again, the ability to sign a loadout ticket, the ability to email or text a ticket, and feed warnings, and then even the sample bag deal. So otherwise, I think I am complete. So I am going to pass this to Christopher, and we are going to answer some questions afterwards where hopefully Christopher and I can answer those. So let's go ahead and change the presenter to Christopher. And let's see if this works. There you go. Christopher, we see
All
your
right.
latest pin.
All right. Awesome. All right. So we're going to talk about bin view application. This is in your mill master menu under utilities. So I'm going to light it up here. It's a live grid of bins. It's meant to kind of replace the traditional whiteboard that you see in a lot of facilities, which show like what's in each bin and how much. So if we look at this, we get for any given bin, what product is in the bin. In this case, ground corn blend in bin 301, how much is in the bin in pounds, and how much empty space is in the bin. So the way I see people use this often is they will park it up in a corner of their workstation screen. As you know, a typical workstation has got a bunch of screens tiled very carefully on it by the operator. And then, for example, let's say as a loadout operator, use these filters on the right-hand side. So he would say, well, here's my bay, and I care about source bins, right? It's the only thing really relevant to loadout. And so now when a truck comes up, he can make a decision about what load should go next based upon what he has. He can quickly see that, for example, well, I don't really have very much duration one, but I got a lot of finishers, so we'll send that load next. So it helps them make those kind of decisions. And then by comparison, let's say you're a pellet mill operator. Well, then you might look at your source bins to see, well, has batching made enough of something for me to start my pellet run? Like, well, I can see the batch run is not done making duration, but I made enough that I could get started and not run out partway through. So I think I will. And then maybe looks at his destinations also to say, have I got a place to put this? Is there enough space in the bin for it? That's where the weight to fill comes in handy. So it allows people at each given phase in the mill to make decisions about, what I can do and where I can put things. So that's its most common use. You'll see it, like I say, parked up in the corner of a screen, but it can do more. If you double click on a bin, then you'll get a window that lets you do some different functions. For example, you have access to assignments here. This is not really any different than the other places you do an assignment in MillMaster. It's just convenient to have it also here, and maybe even it's the manager doing it or somebody just ad hoc. And it's slightly different interface because we're doing it by bin instead of what you're used to perhaps is seeing it by product and the set of bins. But in this case, I've got bin 708 and said, oh, I want to move this. I'm going to put it somewhere else. I'm this assignment because I know something went wrong and it didn't get assigned right. So I'm going to correct it. So it's asking me, do I want to put a duration assigned 708? I'm going to say yes. Now we also see a deassign button. It's not used terribly often, but it can be useful to send a message to another portion of the mill. Like let's say, we rely upon the operator ultimately to know when a bin is empty. We know that, a human has to ultimately make that decision. But let's say you're a loadout operator and you know for sure that bin 708 is empty. So maybe you want to deassign it just to send a message to somebody upstream that that bin for sure is available. There's not something in there. I know it's clean. Again, not used terribly often, but that is its function. Okay. And by the way, when you're doing these assignments, that all does get tracked in your assignment audit, just as you would anywhere else in the mill. So telling you what assignment changes were made and who made them. In this case, I'm logged in as Beta Raven operator, but you'd have something more specific. And just so you know, the regular record keeping and protections are all still there. Okay, another thing you can do is, I'm going to choose something more interesting for this, I think. Let's use trace mineral. You have a little inventory box here where we can do some basic adjustments to the inventory. And of course, you're doing your regular physicals maybe every week, but sometimes you need to fine tune something because something, I don't know, got out of whack or whatever. So you can do that here. You could use the set empty button, which just does pretty much what it says, puts it all to 0, not used terribly often. But you can also just make a quick adjustment. Let's say for some reason I know that inventory got out of kilter there, and there's really more in there than I thought. So let's just add 500 to that bin's on hand. You'll see this on hand change when I do that. So a quick way to modify inventory outside of a physical when you have that type of thing come up. All right, so now we can also do lot tracking changes. So in this case, I see a display of all the lots that are currently in bin 401. And that display alone can be useful, just to see what's going on. But I also have the ability to double click on these, edit them, and I could say, oh gosh, that lot's not active. Those bags are not on the floor anymore. I don't want people to use those. Or I could set it complete. So I can make those kind of quick changes. Some people, lot tracking can get complicated, and sometimes it's necessary to fine tune things. In a perfect world, you received it in receiving and everything got just exactly right and passed all the way through to loadout and you didn't have to tweak anything, even if you have a computer-driven hand data or something more complex like that. But in the real world, sometimes you got to make a little tune-up. And we also have the ability on this screen to make adjustments. And again, takes you an interface pretty similar to in the regular adjustment screen. And in this case, I will just receive an extra 120 pounds in here. And I'm just going to make a note that that was overlooked by receiving, let's say. And so you'll notice that the received value will increase to that 120 now. So that was a quick adjustment I made. And if I go look in adjustments, that adjustment will appear there. This is the one I just made. And I just want to show you that so you understand that the same records are kept. It's just a different user interface. Many people find, that just like having the ability to do a quick thing by bin and not have to go through all the way to adjustments and go through that. So, but all the safeguards and record keeping is still there. And as you can see, it's pretty elaborate. You can shrink it or use it or receive it, whatever needs to be done. And the note comes in handy as well. Okay, so you will also notice that we've got a little graphic on the left showing the bin and how full it is. Obviously, that's not strictly necessary to make it work, but it is an additional safeguard so that somebody can see at a glance that a bin's close to full or close to empty, help prevent errors. To make this work, though, we have to know what is the shape of your bin, what is its volume. We know the density of your material already. You've put that in or we've calculated it. But logically, we need to know the shape of the bin to know if it's half full or whatever. So that would be under bin capacities. Now, Steve kind of pointed out earlier, we have the help file, and it's useful to look at the little diagram that we have for bin capacities to help you enter that in. So I'll put these both up at the same time. Oops. Okay, so some of you may already have bin capacities entered in, so you can do physicals. If we know the shape of your bin, then it becomes possible to drop a tape down it, and by the inches on there, we can do the math, But if you're not familiar, basically you define a bin capacity type for every type of bin you have in your system. You don't have to do it for every bin because I'm sure some of your bins are the same, just for every type of bin you have. So if we look at a specific bin here, we see 10 sections. So the approach we've taken is just to say, well, slice a bin up into 10 sections and that will accommodate whatever shape it is. In other words, a typical cone, as we see in this diagram, we've implemented by saying, oh, well, in this example, 3 sections. And that's close enough. I mean, this isn't, the capacity of a bin is not a precision thing. And some people don't even bother with that much. They ignore the cone and just enter the bin as a giant cylinder. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in any case, you have the power to slice it into as many as 10 slices, which on this one they've done, although again, that's probably overkill in most cases. But each slice says, well, how many inches high is that slice? And what is the volume of that slice? And that is enough information for us to take and combine with your density of the material so that you can do a physical by dropping the tape down there and we can do the math, or you can get this graphic on your bin view, which again, I think is worth doing. And the one additional step that you have to do, and maybe it seems like common sense, but I'm gonna look at it, is once you define your capacities, you must go to the bin in question and make sure you assign a capacity to it. You can see down here. So it knows that bin 701 is that shape, that particular capacity type. So that is about everything you need to know about bin view. I think, Chad, if you want to, have you collected questions? Do you want to give Steve questions first or me? How would you want to do that?
Yeah, the only question we have is actually for you, Christopher. Are the bin levels theoretical and based on what you put in and put out, or can you communicate or connect to a continuous level reading system?
Yes, they are based on the inventory in MillMaster, and so they don't come directly from a sensor. I think we do have a feature whereby a physical is performed using the sensors. So it would be updated at that time. But right now, I don't think there's a way to like live read like a bin level sensor.
Right. No, it would be totally based on what you receive. But if they wanted to get a reading from the continuous level sensors, you're right. We would run our physical inventory feature, go out and pull those bins, and then update it accordingly. But definitely the weights that we get from receiving are going to be 100 times more accurate than a continuous level sensor. But if you want to do a one-time reading of that, yes, we could do that. Right, Christopher?
Yeah, I think there's a way to like perform a physical using the sensors.
Yep. Yep. And it's yeah, we read the analog signal or the value, and it gets put on to you have to signify that that bin is a censored bin. So yes, there is a way to do it, but it's not live because again, we'd rather you take the truck scale readings or even the shipper's quantity and update the inventory. And then as receiving fills the bin, your batching system would pull out of it and that inventory would be dead on. Any other questions there, Chad?
Yep. So does the system have the ability to sequence by bin?
Well, your bin assignments would what's
Um,
in there?
well,
Oh,
actually,
I
Steve, it is true. The system will sequence, if I understand the question correctly, um, the devices, I think my
yeah,
screen is still shared, isn't it?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so, all right.
right there. Yep,
So
that's perfect.
you'll see right here, when you use sequencing, you specify which devices you sequence. And in the simplest form, you do what Steve demoed, which is just say, well, my batch mixer I sequence. And if you have two mixers, then you sequence both of them because it could matter, right? But you actually can go a step further and set your destination bins to be sequenced.
Yes,
So you can
that's
imagine running, oh, go ahead.
no, you're right. I probably should have showed that in my demo, but right, if I have two different bins above my pellet mill and I put non-medicated in one and a medicated in the other, you know, if I come back to
Right, you
that
could,
medicated, so I need to have that warning. And yes, the system does do sequence
right,
by bin.
because that medicated one could have been put in there like last week in theory. And you
Hmm.
might be running perfectly legitimate sequence of batches, but then when you go to put it in that bin, that's a violation.
Right.
So you can enable it also for your bins if you are interested in that. And that's also how we control, like in loadout, whether you're interested in sequencing by your pockets on your trailer or sequencing by the equipment above the trailer or both, is by using these enables.
Yep. Any other questions there, Chad?
Yeah, one last question. And Christopher, you might just want to show the screen for this, and then the person that answered this, I'll have
Okay.
Steve get a hold of you. But how do you set up email option for loadout tickets?
Okay, let's take a look here. There are a few things you've got to do, and it will require some involvement by your IT people. So here's the first thing you do. You've got to configure your email host. Your IT people can provide you with these items. Once you've done that, you can send a little test email and prove that that works. So that's the first step. Then you would go to loadout and you would say in the setups here, whether you wish to print your tickets, email them, or send a text alert. You can do whatever combination of those things you want to do. And then the other thing that may seem obvious, but you must go to your business entities and enter a email address for each of your growers. So you'll see an email address here and a text address. Obviously, you only have to enter the ones that you're using. So the email would send a full ticket as an attached PDF, standardized file. The text gives you a much truncated piece of information, as you would expect. You don't put a whole ticket in a text. But it would be more to give someone a heads up. A truck's on its way, if they need to prepare in some way. And then the email is everything that's in a regular paper ticket. But those are the things that you would have to do in order to configure to start sending emails and texts.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. That's all the questions I've seen. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure those questions get to the person that needs to see them. And if not, you'll also be getting an email with the link to download the recorded video. Either a couple hours from now or tomorrow, you'll receive that email. But with that, thank you everyone for your time and have a good rest of your day.